If you either record or mix metal or rock drums, and if your drum tones need a little more character, spice, or mojo, this is your video. Welcome to the show. Today I want to talk about drum room tracks. Very often overlooked, but so important and so much fun. I want to give you a few examples of the cool shit that you can do with your drum room tracks. Let's get started. The most obvious example is adding space to your recording, turning a dry and maybe a little flat sounding recording into something bigger and more exciting. Let's make John Bonham proud of us. But there's a lot more that you can do. What about using your drum room tracks to fatten your snare, to give your drum shells a nice stereo oomph, oomph? Have a listen. But maybe you need the opposite. Maybe your snare needs more bite and more slap. You know, like a nasty and aggressive energy. Check this out. But room tracks can do a lot more for you. They can glue together a bunch of microphones and a bunch of tracks into one instrument. They can bring up a lot of detail from your recording. So let's jump right over into Cubase and have some fun. On with the fun stuff. Let's start processing and mixing our room tracks. We're in Cubase here right now with the drum recording from Lacrimas Produndere. They have just tracked their new album here, and this is from their drum session. I just asked the drummer to play a few more beats, and I want to use this material to show you how I typically treat my room microphones and to show you some of my tricks. So this is what the drums sound like without the room microphones. No processing, no plugins here. It sounds very good, but a little dry and kind of boring maybe. I want to start with my main room microphone track, and that is the AEA R88 stereo microphone, maybe 3 meters in front of the kick drum, same height like the toms, roughly. It sounds like this. And as you can hear, we didn't use an acoustic kick drum in the room on this session, but it doesn't make a difference for what I want to show you. I also had some gobos in between the drums and the microphone to block some of the higher frequencies. Why that? Well, because I want to hear more of the drum shells, more of the oomph, and less of the sizzle of the cymbals. That's why I very often do this, block some of the higher frequencies. Both the ribbon microphone from AEA, but also the gobos in between the source and the mic kind of help to roll off the highs in a nice way. We're still getting a lot of cymbals though. One thing that I really like doing with my room microphones is giving the drum shells, in this case snare and toms, more low-end energy, more depth and more punch. Let me show you how I do this. I'll open up an EQ and I will start with a high cut filter. And a high cut filter is so powerful on room microphones because if you do it right, this becomes like a fader, a volume fader for your cymbals. You can simply pull out the cymbals from your room tracks. You should use a very gentle high cut filter, can be 12 dB or sometimes even 6 dB. Now, if I pull this down, listen to how the cymbals get reduced and how the snare and the toms kind of stay the same. Let's have a listen. You hear this? The cymbals kind of disappear, but the snare sound hasn't changed that much. And this way you can soften the room sound and kind of pull out the cymbals out of your room and kind of focus more on the drum shells. And if you use an even more gentle filter like 60B, you can go even lower and it's going to sound very natural. Because the more steep your filter is, like this, the more unnatural it will sound. So if you want to go low, choose 6 dB and you can go down to something like 2K. And this gives me more of what I actually want from my room tracks. Now, the next thing is, what do I want to boost? What do I want to hear more? And that is the punch, the fundamental frequencies of both snare and toms. Let's go find them. This is what I want. You can even make this dynamically, so it's only being boosted whenever the snare or the toms, which are the loudest signals anywhere, are being hit. So make dynamic. You can additionally use a low-cut filter here, but it's not really needed. Before. Now, if you pull this track into your drum mix, it will become like a Snare Fattener. Have a listen. Without. So you see, it thickens the snare and the toms without changing too much of the cymbals and without sounding too roomy or too washy. Now let's go one step further. Very often you just want to add more ambience. If the drums sound too dry, you pull up the room microphones, right? And maybe you want to add more details, like bring up all the quiet stuff. This is how you do it. We can actually stay with this EQ. Maybe we can reduce this one a little bit. Don't make it too extreme. And I want to add a compressor, and I usually have that one before the EQ. Let's just go for Pro C2. We really want to have extreme compression, and we can have extreme compression because we're just blending the room mics slightly, right? These are not our overheads or our closed microphones, so we can go crazy. I usually go for a pretty extreme algorithm here, something like pumping. Let's have a listen. This sounds pretty good. We really want to have a fast attack. We almost want the compressor to suck out the snare so we hear the sustain. Why? Because we're already getting the attack of the snare from our close mic. This can be fast. Now, with your release time, you control how natural the compression sounds. If you are very fast, it sounds quite natural and transparent. And the longer it gets, the more the compressor starts pumping and the compression gets more obvious. So let's just use something in between for now. And we're hitting 12 dB of compression on the snare drum, which is nice. Now being compressed, this track will actually bring up the room and bring up the details and the quiet stuff in a very nice way. Let's have a listen. Maybe we can go to a different part like this one. And I will slowly bring in the room again. Now there's a lot of things happening at the same time. First of all, this kind of glues together all the single microphones into one instrument. But I also have the impression like, wow, we're actually being in a real room, you know. I suddenly get like a more three-dimensional feel. And a little goes a long way here. And this is something highly addictive. You really get used to that sound. And then after listening to it for a few minutes, once you turn it off, everything sounds so isolated and lonely. Oh wow, that really helps the toms. And without. Like this I can clearly hear like the single microphones on the toms. Listen. Once you bring in the room, there's a certain connection, you know what I mean? And this is where compression really helps. And this is kind of like my go-to setup. Pretty extreme and fast compression and an EQ to tame the highs and to add more punch. I'm sorry I gotta interrupt you here. I hope this was inspiring, and I hope you found some new ideas for your next drum recording or drum mixing. If you want to get more information, you can, because what you've just watched was a part of a little, I think, 1 hour long course that we've just released inside Kohle Audio Cult, and this one is called Drum Room Adventures, where I talk both about recording and mixing drum room microphones, drum room tracks. I talk about my favorite microphones, I talk about miking techniques, mic placement, and I show you more mixing tricks, and I walk you through my room and show you how I position my mics there. So a little fun course to watch to give you information and inspiration to make your drums sound more spicy, right? That's what we want, spice. Anyway, that's all for today. Please leave a comment, subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed it. There's a link below to the course. I forgot to say, if you join my Academy Kohle Audio Cult, that includes all our courses, and that's a lot by now. We do have a lot of drum recording and mixing courses, including the infamous Nolly Drum Experience, I think a 3 or 4 hour long course from Adam Nolly Get Good. A lot of drum stuff in there. Check it out. If you get the membership, you will get all our courses from day one, or you just get the course. It's $19. Enjoy. I see you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.